let's just deal with the elephant in the room here, which is if you look at Bitcoin and you look at all the other cryptos, there's a crypto economy. It's got its own future. It's very complicated and murky. We could talk about it for 3 hours. There's competitive issues, security issues, regulatory issues, nation state issues, complicated. Then there's Bitcoin, a digital property on a dominant network. It doesn't need any of the other crypto whatever to be successful. For Bitcoin to be successful, there are any of 10,000 entities. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, every public investor, every macro investor, every large company on earth, any municipality, any state, any government, there's 10, 20,000 people. They go to sleep tonight. They could wake up tomorrow morning and they could say, I think Bitcoin looks like crypto gold. I'm going to go ahead and put 3% of my portfolio in it. That means I'm going to buy $4 billion of it. I'm going to buy $4 or $5 billion of it. It's nothing to me. It's nothing. It's like figure out how important 2% of your money is. It's like that deal. It's like, I noticed it. I'm going to put 2-3% of my assets into it. We'll see where it goes. LFG. And they put the news release out on the wire, and Bitcoin doubles or triples. And then, if the Sovereign Wealth Fund of some Middle Eastern state did it, if they bought $5 billion, these people have $500 billion. The central banks of smart countries, they're not sitting on a bunch of long-dated T-bills. They're not holding a bunch of sovereign debt. They're holding Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google. It's the day that Warren Buffett gets up and he says to some dude that works for him, I got 50 billion, figure out something to invest it in. And the dude says, we bought $10 billion worth of Apple, and then Apple triples. And Warren Buffett made more money on Apple stock, which was a delegated decision by a dude. He made more money on Apple stock than he made in his entire life, and he's acknowledged to be like maybe one of the most successful investors of the last 100 years. And yet the thing he made the most money on was like an afterthought. So back to what does this mean to Bitcoin? It's like some dude with a $400 billion balance sheet can delegate to a portfolio manager to look at this thing, and that portfolio manager can say, I'm going to put 2% into it. If you pick up the paper and you read that the Sovereign Wealth Fund of such and such state bought $5 billion worth of it, what happens is the next 5 countries, they think they'll put $5 billion into it. And then somebody at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley say, I guess we probably should grab some. And then Ray Dalio with his $50 billion or $100 billion or $150 billion, instead of like 0.5%, maybe 3%. Okay. And then all of a sudden Bitcoin spends from 40,000 to 150,000. And I guess what I'm telling you is, there's 10,000 people that could make $5 billion in 30 days if they wanted to bend over and pick up the money without taking a risk. And it's literally like they might just notice you. They haven't really noticed you yet. But at the end of the day, the future is going to be determined in part by the past. And in part of it is what the crypto industry thinks and does. But a lot of it is a function of one regulator could get up tomorrow and put out a press release that would double the market. Any politician, there's probably 200 politicians. There's 10,000 big companies. There's 10,000 big institutional investors. There's 10,000 big governmental entities. Here's the big idea. The thing's at a tipping point. You don't need them all to agree. You just need anybody to agree. All you need is 1, 2, 3. 1 will tip 5, will tip 25. And then you spin up by an order of magnitude. So when will that happen? I don't know. Is it an if? It's not an if, it's a when. It will happen because I can't really imagine that we live in a world where 30,000 people don't want billions of dollars of money. Sometimes I'll talk to these big investors and they'll say, what's this thing with Bitcoin? I say, well, it's digital properties, the dominant global digital asset network, and it's a lever. And here's the reason it's better than credit or bonds or real estate. Here's how it fits in your portfolio. And they're like, I got to think about it some more. And I try to always be very polite, but in the back of my head, I'm like, you have $25 billion in your portfolio and you generated 2% yield last year, which is downright embarrassing because the S&P was up 25% and a freaking robot could have got 10x what you got. I'm telling you, take $1 billion, take $2 billion, buy Bitcoin, put out a press release, explain why you bought it, and wait, and you're going to double your money. You must not like money, right? Like, because it would take you, I don't know, not that long. It's not easy to make billions of dollars. It's not easy. But there is one easy way, Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the easy way. And it all comes down to what's your balance sheet, right? It used to be that someone with $50 million could lean on it. You saw our impact. We started with 500 million. We really started with 250 million in capital that we could invest. And so now we're up to 5 billion. But what happens when someone comes in starting with 5 billion, right? And I think that the future is a function of what everybody else in the world does. And there's a lot of people that have a vested interest in discovering this. This is a solution to a lot of problems. It's a big tech solution. If you're Apple, you can take your market cap up by $2 trillion. Okay, so does someone at Apple want to make $2 trillion? Presumably. You know, there are certain exchanges that will remain nameless. You know, you take $1 billion, you buy Bitcoin, you put it out on the wire, Bitcoin trades up, your stock trades up, right? So there are a lot of big tech companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, to just name a few. They could make $100 billion to $1 trillion. Will they? Not all of them, but somebody will. Turkey could print $1 billion worth of lira, buy $1 billion of Bitcoin and denominated in lira, double the price of Bitcoin in lira, right? It's a simple trade. In the Emirates, they could just buy $1 billion, 10 billion of Bitcoin with DRAM, right? They have their own currency. Take your own currency, convert it into property. It's a reflexive trade. It doesn't work for the last entrant to the market, but it works for the first 5%. So it's an obvious trade for a nation state. It's an obvious trade for any company. Like a company, let's take my company. What did I do? Well, first I took existing cash and I bought Bitcoin. Then I borrowed money and bought more Bitcoin. Why was I able to borrow the money? I was able to borrow the money because the stock traded up because I bought the Bitcoin, right? So buying the Bitcoin drove the stock, opened up the opportunity to borrow the money, opened up more opportunities. And in the third and the fourth quarter, we sold $1 billion worth of stock. We sold $1 billion of stock, you know, blended $700 a share. You remember what the stock was at when I started the journey? Okay, so what's going on is I'm backing the equity of the company with an asset which is stronger than a currency. The equity trades up, all the securities of the company trade up, and then I borrow money to buy back into the balance sheet. So today, you know, say what you will, we're sitting on $5 billion or 124,000 Bitcoin, right? Which is an asset as opposed to having a liability. And we got there in 18 months. We got there from August to today, right? About 18 months. And if you're a municipality, like a mayor, the mayor of New York, you know, if you go check New York municipal debt, they can borrow money at 1% interest. New York could go borrow $1 billion. I mean, here's the real Bitcoin bond. You borrow $1 billion at 1% interest, you buy Bitcoin. Better idea? You borrow $10 billion at 1% interest, you buy 10 billion of Bitcoin. So do this thought experiment. What would happen if you woke up and you read a press release from the mayor of New York saying, we just issued $5 billion of debt and we're going to buy Bitcoin with it to fix the balance sheet of New York City?